Long before audiences would see Jaafar Jackson on the big screen, something remarkable was already happening behind closed rehearsal studio doors. Away from the cameras, away from movie premieres, and far from the headlines, months of preparation were quietly transforming Michael Jackson's nephew into one of Hollywood's most talked-about rising actors. Early rehearsal footage offered only brief glimpses of the process, but those few moments were enough to spark worldwide excitement. Fans who watched carefully noticed familiar movements, unmistakable posture, and an energy that felt surprisingly authentic. It wasn't simply because Jaafar looked like Michael. It was the way he carried himself, the rhythm of his movements, and the natural confidence that reminded people of one of the greatest entertainers in history. What many initially assumed would be another celebrity biopic suddenly began attracting serious attention from fans, dancers, and film professionals alike. The challenge facing Jaafar was unlike anything most actors ever experience. Portraying Michael Jackson required far more than learning choreography or wearing carefully designed costumes. Michael's performances were built on extraordinary precision, years of discipline, and a stage presence that audiences instantly recognized. Every glance, every gesture, and every pause carried intention. Those involved with the production understood that audiences would compare every movement to decades of iconic performances that millions of people knew by heart. That meant rehearsals became more than physical training. They became an intensive study of Michael's artistry, performance style, and creative philosophy. Rather than attempting a simple imitation, the goal was to understand the dedication and preparation that made Michael's performances feel effortless. As additional rehearsal clips began appearing online, public opinion started to change. Many fans who had been uncertain about the casting found themselves expressing cautious optimism after watching Jaafar move across the rehearsal floor. Some commented that they briefly forgot they were watching an actor preparing for a role. Others praised the commitment visible in every rehearsal, recognizing the enormous responsibility that came with portraying a member of his own family. Hollywood soon realized that this project was becoming much more than another musical biography. It was evolving into one of the most anticipated films ever made about Michael Jackson. But throughout the history of cinema, countless actors have portrayed famous musicians, athletes, and world leaders. But few roles have carried the weight of portraying Michael Jackson. His influence stretched far beyond music, making him one of the most recognized people on Earth. Billions of people knew his voice, his dance moves, his expressions, and even the smallest details of his stage performances. That meant audiences wouldn't simply watch Jaafar Jackson as another actor. They would instinctively compare every movement, every smile, every gesture, and every performance to decades of memories they already carried. It was a level of scrutiny that very few performers in Hollywood have ever faced. The challenge wasn't just recreating Michael's appearance, it was capturing the presence of someone whose charisma had captivated audiences across generations and cultures. That reality shaped every stage of Jaafar's preparation. Rather than trying to become an exact copy of his uncle, he focused on understanding what made Michael such a unique performer. He studied the discipline behind the artistry, recognizing that Michael's greatest strength wasn't simply his dancing, it was the emotion he communicated through every performance. Rehearsals emphasized timing, musicality, posture, and expression just as much as choreography. Every movement needed to feel natural instead of rehearsed, allowing audiences to connect with the character rather than notice the effort behind the performance. Because Jaafar had grown up within the Jackson family, he also carried a personal understanding of Michael that no amount of research alone could provide. Even so, he understood that family connection would not automatically earn public acceptance. That trust would have to be earned through months of preparation and every scene captured on camera. As more rehearsal footage emerged, it became increasingly clear why filmmakers had placed their confidence in Jaafar. Viewers began recognizing not only the physical resemblance, but also the calm confidence and attention to detail that echoed Michael's approach to performing. Still, everyone involved understood that the greatest test would come only when audiences experienced the complete story on screen. The success of the film would depend on far more than costumes or choreography. It would depend on whether viewers believed they were witnessing the spirit of Michael Jackson brought to life with honesty, respect, and authenticity. That was the challenge Jaafar accepted from the very beginning, and it explains why becoming Michael Jackson was never simply another acting role. It was one of the most demanding artistic responsibilities any performer could undertake. Yet, as difficult as the role appeared, the physical preparation behind some of Michael's most iconic. To the audience, Michael Jackson's dancing always looked effortless. Every spin, every glide, every perfectly timed stop seemed to happen naturally, as though the music itself was guiding his body. But professional dancers have long understood the truth. Michael's performances demanded extraordinary physical control, relentless practice, and near-perfect precision. That reality became impossible for Jaafar Jackson to ignore, as production on the biopic intensified. Learning the choreography wasn't enough. He had to reproduce movements that fans around the world had watched thousands of times, often frame by frame. The smallest mistake, a hand placed too high, a pause that lasted too long, or a step taken a fraction of a second too early, could immediately break the illusion. Every rehearsal, therefore, became a test of endurance, patience, and attention to detail, with each movement refined repeatedly until it matched the rhythm and energy audiences associated with Michael's legendary performances. The challenge grew even greater because Michael never approached dance as a collection of individual steps. Every movement flowed naturally into the next, creating the impression that the choreography was simply an extension of the music itself. To recreate that feeling, Jaafar devoted countless hours to studying Michael's body language, learning how he shifted his weight, controlled his balance, and generated explosive energy without sacrificing elegance. Rehearsals demanded far more than physical fitness. They required muscle memory, coordination, and complete concentration from beginning to end. Dance coaches and creative collaborators worked carefully through each sequence, ensuring that every performance respected the original choreography, while still allowing the film to tell its own story. The process was physically exhausting, but everyone involved understood that authenticity would depend on mastering details that most viewers would notice only subconsciously. As more rehearsal footage emerged, those months of preparation became increasingly visible. Long before Jaafar Jackson stepped into a rehearsal studio to portray Michael Jackson, he had already spent a lifetime surrounded by music. Born into one of the most influential families in entertainment history, he grew up in an environment where creativity was simply part of everyday life. Music wasn't something reserved for concert stages or recording studios. It was woven into family gatherings, conversations, and personal experiences. Yet despite carrying the famous Jackson surname, Jaafar's childhood remained far more private than many people imagined. Rather than being pushed into the spotlight from an early age, he was allowed to develop at his own pace, discovering his own interests, while quietly observing the extraordinary legacy that surrounded him. Those early years gave him a unique perspective on Michael, not only as a global superstar, but as a beloved member of the family whose influence extended far beyond the stage. As Jaafar grew older, his admiration for his uncle naturally deepened. Like millions of fans around the world, he watched Michael's concerts, studied his performances, and appreciated the remarkable discipline behind every achievement. But unlike most people, Jaafar also understood the human side of that legacy. He recognized the commitment, sacrifice, and relentless work ethic required to reach such extraordinary heights. That understanding became invaluable once he was cast in the biopic. Instead of approaching the role as an outsider trying to imitate an icon, Jaafar drew upon years of personal familiarity with the Jackson family's values, traditions, and respect for artistic excellence. While acting coaches, choreographers, and filmmakers helped shape the technical aspects of the performance, the emotional connection to Michael's story had been developing quietly throughout his entire life. Looking back, it becomes easier to understand why so many people involved with the production believed Jaafar was uniquely suited for the role. His preparation did not begin with a casting announcement or the first rehearsal. It began years earlier through the experiences, lessons, and family history that shaped his character long before Hollywood came calling. Those foundations gave him the confidence to embrace one of the most demanding roles any actor could undertake, while remaining respectful of the legacy he had inherited. Yet growing up within the Jackson family also meant carrying expectations, unlike those faced by almost any other young performer. Until the biopic was announced, Jaafar had lived largely out. For most of his life, Jaafar Jackson lived far away from the constant media attention that followed the Jackson family name. While millions of fans around the world remained fascinated by Michael Jackson's legacy, Jaafar largely stayed out of the public spotlight, choosing to focus on his own interests and artistic development. Unlike many celebrity relatives who grow up under relentless media coverage, he was able to develop as both a musician and performer without facing worldwide expectations every day. That relative privacy allowed him to mature naturally, giving him the opportunity to build confidence before stepping onto one of the biggest stages of his life. But everything changed the moment it was announced that he had been selected to portray Michael Jackson in the official biopic. Overnight, his name was no longer known only within entertainment circles. It became the subject of headlines, interviews, and conversations among fans across the globe. The announcement immediately brought enormous expectations. Every photograph released from the production, every rehearsal clip, and every behind-the-scenes glimpse was carefully examined by millions of viewers, eager to see whether Jaafar could truly bring Michael's story to life. Social media quickly filled with side-by-side comparisons of his appearance, dance movements, and expressions. Some fans approached the project with cautious optimism, while others wondered whether anyone could possibly portray one of the most recognizable entertainers in history. Rather than responding to the growing attention with public statements or controversy, Jaafar allowed his preparation to speak for itself. He continued working closely with the film's creative team, refining each performance and focusing on honoring Michael's legacy through discipline and authenticity, instead of trying to imitate him for quick approval. As more footage emerged, public confidence gradually began to grow, with many viewers acknowledging the remarkable. One of the greatest misconceptions surrounding the Michael Jackson biopic is that Jaafar Jackson's career began the moment he accepted the role. In reality, he had already been pursuing music and developing his own artistic identity long before Hollywood announced the film. Growing up in the Jackson family naturally exposed him to extraordinary musical talent, but it also presented a unique challenge. Every performance, every song, and every creative decision would inevitably be compared to one of the most celebrated entertainers in history. Rather than allowing those comparisons to define him, Jaafar quietly focused on discovering his own style. He wrote music, explored different sounds, and worked on becoming an artist whose work reflected his own personality. Those experiences gave him confidence and maturity before he ever stepped into a rehearsal studio to portray his legendary uncle. That personal journey became one of his greatest strengths during production. The filmmakers weren't simply looking for someone who could imitate Michael's voice or recreate famous dance routines. They needed an actor capable of understanding the emotions behind the performances. Because Jaafar had already experienced the challenges of building an identity while carrying one of the world's most recognizable family names, he approached the role with empathy rather than imitation. Instead of asking, "How can I copy Michael?" he focused on understanding why Michael moved the way he did, why he connected so deeply with audiences, and why every performance carried such powerful emotion. That perspective helped transform rehearsals from technical exercises into genuine performances, allowing him to honor Michael's legacy while still bringing his own sincerity and dedication to the screen. As filming progressed, audiences gradually realized they weren't simply watching another actor wearing Michael Jackson's costumes. They were watching a performer who respected the immense responsibility of telling one of music's greatest stories while remaining true to himself. That balance may have been the most difficult part of the entire project. If Jaafar copied too much, the performance could feel artificial. If he changed too much, it might lose the authenticity fans expected. Finding the space between those two extremes required patience, discipline, and remarkable artistic judgment. By staying committed to both Michael's legacy and his own identity, Jaafar began earning the confidence of fans around the world. Yet the greatest challenge of the journey wasn't physical or technical, it was emotional. As production entered its final stages, he found himself carrying not only the expectations of Hollywood, but also the responsibility of bringing one of the most beloved figures in entertainment history back to life for an entirely new generation. Recreating Michael Jackson's life required far more than learning songs, rehearsing choreography, or wearing costumes inspired by his most famous performances. Behind every scene stood an emotional responsibility unlike almost any other in modern filmmaking. Michael's story is remembered not only for extraordinary success, but also for the challenges, triumphs, and personal moments that shaped his life. For Jaafar Jackson, portraying his uncle meant revisiting memories that had affected his own family while introducing those experiences to millions of viewers around the world. Every scene demanded careful balance, remaining faithful to history while honoring the humanity of a man whose influence extended far beyond the stage. It quickly became clear that the emotional weight of the role could not be measured by dance rehearsals alone. The greatest challenge was bringing sincerity, compassion, and authenticity to a story that continues to mean so much to people across generations. That emotional journey became visible throughout the production process. Between demanding dance rehearsals and dramatic scenes, Jaafar was not simply studying Michael's performances. He was working to understand the person behind them. He explored interviews, public appearances, and the quieter moments that revealed Michael's kindness, determination, and relentless pursuit of excellence. The filmmakers understood that audiences already knew the legendary performances. What they hoped to capture was the human being behind the spotlight. That meant every conversation, every expression, and every quiet moment on screen carried as much importance as the biggest musical numbers. The goal was never to present a flawless icon, but to portray a gifted artist whose When the casting announcement for the Michael Jackson biopic was first revealed, reactions were understandably mixed. Many fans wondered whether anyone could truly portray one of the most iconic entertainers in history. Michael Jackson's voice, movements, charisma, and stage presence had become deeply embedded in popular culture for decades, making the role one of the most demanding ever attempted in a musical film. But as production continued and carefully selected rehearsal footage began reaching the public, opinions gradually started to shift. Instead of focusing solely on physical resemblance, audiences began noticing something far more important: the discipline, commitment, and authenticity Jaafar Jackson brought to every performance. Those qualities quickly attracted the attention of filmmakers, choreographers, and entertainment professionals who recognized that portraying Michael required much more than talent alone. It demanded complete respect for the legacy while earning the confidence of millions of fans around the world. Behind the scenes, that confidence had been built through months of preparation rather than publicity. Every rehearsal reflected an extraordinary level of dedication as Jaafar worked alongside the creative team to refine choreography, posture, expressions, and stage presence. Rather than attempting a simple impersonation, he focused on understanding the artistic principles that made Michael's performances unforgettable. That approach allowed each scene to feel genuine instead of exaggerated. As additional footage emerged, many viewers commented that certain moments captured the energy and spirit they associated with Michael, creating brief instances where the distinction between actor and artist seemed to disappear. It wasn't because Jaafar was trying to become Michael in every aspect of his life. It was because he had invested the time necessary to understand the precision, emotion, and discipline that defined Michael's work. For many within the industry, that thoughtful preparation became one of the strongest reasons to believe the film had found the right person for the role. Today, anticipation surrounding the biopic continues growing as audiences wait to see the finished performance in its entirety. Expectations remain extraordinarily high, but so does the confidence inspired by the work already revealed. Hollywood understands that success will ultimately depend not only on choreography or visual resemblance, but on whether audiences genuinely connect with the story being told. Jaafar Jackson has approached that responsibility with patience, humility, and unwavering commitment, qualities that have steadily strengthened public confidence throughout the production process. Whether the film becomes one of the defining musical biographies of its generation will ultimately be decided by audiences. Yet one thing has already become clear. Jaafar has earned the opportunity to tell Michael Jackson's story through dedication rather than reputation alone. And as the film prepares to introduce that story to the world, attention now turns towards something even greater than a single performance: the remarkable legacy that Jaafar is preparing to carry into the future. As the Michael Jackson biopic moves closer to its release, one truth has become increasingly clear. This film is about far more than recreating famous concerts or revisiting unforgettable moments in music history. It represents an opportunity for a new generation to discover the extraordinary story behind one of the most influential entertainers the world has ever known. For Jaafar Jackson, accepting this role has never been about replacing his uncle or living in his shadow. Instead, it has been about honoring a legacy that changed music, dance, fashion, and popular culture forever. Through months of disciplined rehearsal, careful preparation, and an unwavering commitment to authenticity, he has approached the role with respect for both the artist Michael Jackson became and the human being remembered by those who knew him best. Every rehearsal, every scene, and every performance has reflected a desire to celebrate that remarkable legacy rather than simply imitate it. At the same time, Jaafar's journey marks the beginning of a new chapter in his own career. While audiences around the world naturally recognize him because of his family name, this film gives him the opportunity to establish himself as an actor and performer in his own right. The responsibility has been immense, but so has the opportunity. By embracing one of Hollywood's most demanding roles, he has demonstrated the patience, discipline, and professionalism required to carry a project of extraordinary significance. Whatever audiences ultimately think of the finished film, few can overlook the commitment that has already become visible throughout the rehearsal footage and behind-the-scenes glimpses released during production. Rather than relying on family history alone, Jaafar has allowed his preparation, work ethic, and dedication to earn the confidence of many fans who were initially uncertain about the casting. In doing so, he has shown that honoring a legendary legacy begins with hard work rather than expectation. Perhaps that is the most meaningful lesson behind this entire journey. Great legacies are not preserved simply through memories. They continue because each generation chooses to respect, protect, and celebrate them in new ways. Michael Jackson's influence still reaches every corner of the entertainment world, inspiring artists, dancers, musicians, and filmmakers decades after his greatest performances first captivated audiences. Now, Jaafar Jackson stands at the beginning of his own path, carrying with him both the privilege and the responsibility of telling that story to millions of people around the world. Whether viewers have followed Michael's career for decades or are discovering it for the very first time, this film offers a chance to revisit one of music's greatest legacies through fresh eyes. And perhaps that is exactly what Michael Jackson always hoped his work would achieve, not simply to be remembered, but to continue inspiring future generations long after the final performance had ended. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never missed our next documentary. Until next time, thank you for watching.